Let's look at some tips now for progressing in your cardiovascular exercise routine. So, if you're a beginner, you're probably thinking, okay, I want to progress, but I want to do it safely. I don't want to injure myself, and I want to do it in a way that's smart. And I think the first thing that I should note is to be honest where you're currently at. In high school, maybe you were somebody who did lots of cross country, you raced a lot, or maybe you were like a competitive biker and you haven't worked out for the last 20 years. And now you're a 40-year-old parent, you're just trying to get back into it to get healthy for your family, feel better at work. You need to be honest with yourself and the fact that you're not where you used to be. And that's okay. We're going to slowly get into this. We're going to build up over time. And we might never fully get back to where we were completely when we were a high school athlete, for example. But we can get pretty darn close as long as we're progressing in a safe and smart way. The biggest thing here is to just realize you're not going to get it back overnight. You're not going to get it back in even a year. It's going to take some time. So we need to be honest with where we are currently at as an individual. And then we can also look at the different recovery costs of certain exercises. So certain exercises that need higher recovery are ones that are sprinting based or sport based, where it's going to get your heart rate up really, really high, tax your central nervous system. That's going to take more to recover from. You're going to need more days of not doing exercise or that type of activity to get back to that baseline. Running is another great example. Also, if you're somebody who's just doing a large amount of work, maybe you're walking or maybe you're doing a light walk every day, but you're doing like 3 hours of light walking every day, that's going to come at a huge recovery cost that you need to take into consideration when you are trying to progress in maybe an other aspect of fitness. You're trying to get better at biking, for example. Lower recovery modalities would be biking or walking. Usually stuff that we would consider as kind of lower impact, so maybe like a stair stepper. If you're not burning a huge amount of calories and you're just doing like maybe 20 to 30 minutes of some moderate cardio every single day where your heart rate's up, it feels a little tough, but you're not killing yourself, you don't really need to stress too much about this. You're going to be recovering okay, assuming that your nutrition is good, which that might be a big assumption for some people. Make sure your nutrition is on point. I always like using RPE in the beginning. So this is basically the rate of perceived exhaustion. And we can shoot for about a 1 to 10 scale. So 1 being the easiest exercise we've ever done, 10 being incredibly difficult. When we are doing cardiovascular exercise, I usually recommend for people to do about a 5 to 6 difficulty in the beginning when they're first starting out. And then we can kind of ramp up over time. But this is usually a really good starting point because not a lot of people know what their heart rate is and what it should be and et cetera, et cetera. So you can just say, hey, I'm just going to do a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10, and I'm going to go out for a light jog. And once I feel like I'm into a 7, I'm going to peel back a little bit and tone down. Really, really good and easy way to progress. We can also just focus on hitting the recommended guidelines as a starting point. So this is basically 150 minutes of moderate activity per week. Moderate activity is usually a light brisk walk, maybe a really light bike ride. Maybe you're just kind of gardening out in your garden. Where else would you garden? You're going to do some planting, some light activity, and you're going to build up over time. The higher the impact activity, the less you can get away with. So if you're doing some of those sports or you're doing some vigorous running, you might only need to do 75 minutes to get kind of that minimum recommendation. These minimum recommendations are guidelines based off the American College of Sports Medicine and something that we can base off of as a springboard down the road to get further physical activity. Another thing to mention when looking at this is just to simply progress slowly. A good rule of thumb is to do 10% of duration extra in the following week. So if you start out today and you are running maybe 10 minutes, you're doing a 10-minute jog on Monday, 10-minute jog on Friday. Next week, 10%, that's only 1 minute more. You're going to do an 11-minute jog on Monday, 11-minute jog on Friday. This is, of course, going to build exponentially, but you're going to do it very, very slowly. And that's the biggest thing. We're trying to get our connective tissue to build up, as this takes a longer time to recover and get stronger compared to your cardiovascular system, which can actually get pretty strong and pretty fit very quickly. So that's usually why a lot of people don't progress safely and actually injure themselves, is their connective tissue, their knees, their joints, their ankles, all these things get hurt from all these overuse injuries because they go way too far and do it way too quick. 10% a week will give you a good starting off baseline. And then if you're feeling beat up, don't stress, back off a little bit. Take 10% off. And then, following the subsequent week, you can maybe go back up to 5% and then 10% and just build yourself up. This is a really long game, and that's how you want to look at it as. We're not trying to do this for one day or 1 week. We're trying to do this for a very long portion of time because that's where you're going to get the best overarching results from cardiovascular activity. Like this video if you're getting some value from it so far.